Hi, I'm Lizzie Phillips, and this is the Networking Diaries. So today's Networking Diaries, I've been doing networking since 2007. So a long time of networking. I've got lots of networking tips and sharing of secrets and stories. This month's wonderful guest is joining us all the way from Israel, Helena Baker. She runs a great networking group called the English Speaking Networking. She's been doing that since September 2019, although I've known Helena a lot longer than that. She runs 3 groups, 80 members, and 1 international online networking group. Helena, maybe you like to explain a little bit more about, it's nice to meet another fellow networker, events networker, first of all, and hopefully you can tell us a little bit more about your networking.
Absolutely. So I was lucky enough to do your networking in England, and I guess I was what you would call a serial networker back in England. I kind of did them all, tried them all. It's really how I grew my business, and which was copywriting back in the day. I don't go near that anymore, but I was a copywriter. When I moved to Israel, my plan was to really continue networking and to grow my business that way. And what I found to be the problem was that there was a lot of networking in high tech, which is not my field, or it was in Hebrew, and my Hebrew was not very good when I arrived in Israel. It's now a little bit better, but it's still not quite there. So I decided to create my own networking group. So I created English Speaking Networking. There's lots of expats here. There's a huge community, many of whom are business owners. So I saw a gap in the market to create English Speaking Networking, which is a networking group for English speaking business owners looking to gain more clients. And we launched in Tel Aviv, which is like the center city of Israel. We then expanded to Yerushalayim and Herzliya. And then COVID hit, which is obviously was an interesting experience for a face-to-face networking group. And that just caused a lot of change, a lot of online. And now I have an online international group where we have business owners from right around the world joining to network, and predominantly America, Israel, and England.
Wow, that's quite a lot of info there, Helena, in one here. So let's go back to you mentioned COVID. You mentioned the dreaded C word. Yeah. So I'm actually suffering with a cold today as well, as you probably tell by my husky voice. So COVID, we've kept in touch throughout the years, and how on earth did you feel when things were progressing globally? How did you kind of deal and take on the challenge of doing networking during a pandemic?
So initially, I didn't deal with it very well at all, to be honest. Basically, my business was launched in October 2019, and then COVID hit in March. So I was about 6 months into the business, and I did not think the business would survive, to be perfectly honest with you. Back in the day, online networking was not a thing. Like, it was not something that was done. Now we think of it as very normal, but like, I was part of one online networking group, which is very poorly run. It was very just not great quality, but apart from that, it just didn't really exist. I think people kind of forget that now. So essentially, when COVID kind of hit, I just paused all the meetings. I didn't really know what to do. I just paused everything. And then I did some free online networkings, which I'm really glad that I did that on reflection, because what it allowed me to do is really understand how networking online can work, how it can help people grow their business, what the right tools are. And then we went back fully face-to-face in about June, July time, when everything in Israel opened up fully. We went from kind of full lockdown down to open, which was a very odd decision, but anyway. So I went back face to face, and we restarted all the memberships and kind of reopened, as it were. And then, even though the law actually said we could continue face to face, I no longer felt comfortable doing that, because the numbers in Israel got so high. I mean, they were, and obviously there's no vaccine yet. So we then went back online. I changed the payment structure slightly so it's a bit cheaper for people, moved everything online. And they basically were online for almost a year. We only started going back face to face again it was about 4 months ago. I'm confused with date. but it was quite recent. And interestingly, only Tel Aviv went back face-to-face fully. Jerusalem and Herzliya said, we don't want to go back face-to-face. We like online networking. And every 6 weeks in Jerusalem and Herzliya, I have a face-to-face meeting, but apart from that, it's always online, which I was very, very surprised by. I thought people would want to go back face-to-face. That was absolutely not the case. So online networking has really worked very well. But it was, I would say it was a journey for me to get to a place where I really understood how to do it properly. And I genuinely remember for the first 2 weeks when COVID hit, thinking my business is over and I've just wasted 6 months and I don't know what I'm going to do. Like I was in a dark place, but it's all good now, thankfully.
Yeah. And what's the well, first of all, I have my networking diary in front of me. Okay, it's time to open up my little networking diary and to ask you some wonderful questions. So I mean, you've obviously touched upon that it's quite hard to transform your business in a pandemic anyway. To say the least. Let's just say, if I hear the word pivot one more time, banned word, pivot.
They can go after themselves, really. They can. Not into it at all.
What's one of the challenges of, as an organizer? Quite often, I don't know if you feel like that, you're like a gliding swan where you're just like desperately pedaling underneath when it comes to networking.
Amen to that.
People don't realize the amount of organization that goes into it.
They really, when I first started the group, what people couldn't understand and what has changed is that I charge for networking. How can you charge for it? But people were angry. And I was like, firstly, if you don't want to come, don't come. No, don't do me any favors. Like they were like proper shout at me that it costs money. How dare, real vitriol. I'm just like, calm yourselves down. This is a service I provide, not for, not for charity. Like I have to anyway. That was a big problem.
I'm hearing you. So one of the things I quite often get is, would you like to come along? I ask, would you like to come along as visitor? And they say, well, hang on a minute. I don't, I thought it was going to be free. And quite often I say to myself, one, I need to eat. Two, I'm pretty certain that, if I asked for your services for free for an hour, that wouldn't happen either. So, it's a strange world that we've been living in, but I think people are starting to appreciate actually the level of service that networking brings, which kind of leads me on to international online networking. So how obviously one of the networking groups that I run is called Networking 90, and that has an international feel, although I think the furthest away that we've had is Dubai and France. But I mean I love it. I love one of the things that it's really opened up is being able to meet people across the pond, so to speak, and it just gives a completely different feel to the actual networking itself. I mean, what do you think it's kind of opened up for you?
I'll be honest, for me, it was very much like a strategic decision and a financial decision. The English-speaking market in Israel definitely exists, but it is not endless. There is a limited pool of them. And I've kind of expanded into the major cities that I wanted to in Israel. There was a few more here and there, but I didn't feel there was necessarily the market for it. So I thought, and to be honest, when I launched international, my thinking for it would be that it would be like a Jewish networking group for Jewish people looking to network in Israel, America, and England. And that was kind of my basis of my decision. What happened is that many people from all countries, races, religions, whatever you want to call, joined, which has been amazing. And I'm delighted by that. Definitely didn't expect that at all. I thought, as an Israeli group based here, people would kind of want to be networking with people in Israel for, because they want to move here eventually, they have family here, whatever it is. But that's not been the case. And for me, that's been awesome, to be honest. I met some really interesting people, often the expats in this country, they're amazing, but it's nice to have a whole new type of people who want to come in and network. And the international group, what I really like about it, and I'm sure you have the same feelings about Networking 90, is in terms of the potential, it's huge. If I can really get my name out as an international networker working online, there's a lot of potential there. In the way that Israel's a little bit limited, this is like the sky's really the limit. So it's a lot. I'd say for me, it's very, very exciting. It's still in its infancy, but I'm excited to see where it, please God, can go.
Mm. What's the biggest challenge that you face as running your own networking organization?
Gosh, it's so many challenges. You understand this. I'm smiling because it's hard. And I think people think it's very easy, put on events and it's all very sweet and nice. Listen, the main challenge is that I have 80 members, and they're not always, and we try to please 80 people, and I'd say 80% are just get on with their day and don't, I don't really hear from them. But there's a 20% where either I hear very good things or, they have very serious problems. I have people, complaining to me about other members sometimes. I have people who are upset about a certain speaker and what they said. And it's really dealing with those expectations. And listen, dealing with people is a challenge, and I have 80 of them to deal with that. And I want to grow, which is even more scary. My aim by 2022 is 100. So people, and the truth is that most of them I never hear from. It's the truth, but there's like this 20% that it can be challenging. It really can be. But you get better with it basically, and you have to very much remove yourself emotionally. I find, and just be very logical about it all. I think
Dealing with the general public is what I generally say.
100%. I'll tell you also what a big problem for me actually is, and you may have the same thing, is when we have face-to-face meetings and people get very, very lost, and then I get panicked phone calls and I'll tell you actually, this is actually very, well, not, this is very as well, this one happened in England, but when on the second ever meeting I ever did 2 years ago, we had in Tel Aviv rockets, we had alarms, and the whole city shut down. So this happened, the meeting was at 9 o'clock in the morning, and as I'm getting a taxi to the location, I'm getting calls from people, is the event still happening? And to be honest, I had no idea what was going on. So my boyfriend calls me, says, Helena, just so you know, there's been rockets near the center, which never happens, and be aware that people may not show up. Eventually they shut down the city and I cancelled the whole meeting. But this is happening like half an hour before the meeting. Like, it's my second ever one. I have no brand yet. Someone calls me from the car park and says, I'm here. I said, listen, I'm really sorry. I've been emailing you and trying to call you. We have cancelled the situation. This person hadn't listened to the radio and they were furious. How dare you cancel it? So they closed down the whole city and they sent everyone home. Don't leave the house. And she was furious with me. And I was like, listen to the news. She's like, no. I was like, go home and please listen to the news. And you understand. And then she did apologize later. And then actually recently, when we just gone back face to face, there was more rockets in Tel Aviv and they were very, very, very serious. And it happened on the Tuesday, and the meeting was the Wednesday. So on the Tuesday night, I had to decide, am I still going to have a meeting? Am I going to move it completely online? Are people going to want to come? Are people going to feel safe to come? So in the end, I had one, and I think 5 people turned up, which was, and it was fair and understandable. I got that people were very traumatized because they were really falling in Tel Aviv, which never happens. So that's some of the interesting parts about running networking groups in the Middle East, I guess, that you face these things as well.
So it's interesting that you mentioned that, Helena. One of the sad stories that I have, which is also kind of surrounds just sort of events going on, really, is our London Bridge WYBN group was due to meet basically 2 days after the London Bridge attacks. So kind of always having to make decisions on what you think will be the most responsible thing to do for others in the group, as well, obviously making sure that you're commercially covered too. So it's a challenge. Anna, who did the podcast last time, was mentioning about trading and networking in Asia. One of the things I wanted to ask you, therefore, is have you got any tips or, what have you seen from obviously being predominantly from the UK and then moving to Israel, how they kind of may trade slightly differently or network differently?
Okay, so in terms of networking differently, Israel is based on networking. So there's what's called like protexia in Israel, which basically means that like we were in school together, we did that. Here we have mandatory army service. So everyone does the army. I didn't because I arrived too late, obviously, which works for me because I could not imagine myself in the army with my fiance for 4 years. And so everyone knows everyone. It's a very small country. So it's very much kind of about obviously everywhere it works like that, but very much so in Israel. Oh, I know this person who knows this person. And that's kind of how it works here, a lot more than I've noticed in England. I mean, I say that as someone, and even for me as a networker, I worked very hard to build my connections here, and I'm often getting introduced to people who may be able to help me here and there. So I would say in terms of networking, that it's a lot, everyone networks here. Like, even if they don't realize they're networking, like the economy is built on that, jobs are based around that. So I would definitely notice that. And LinkedIn is huge here. I'm out of the game now with LinkedIn in England, but LinkedIn is significant here as well. In terms of trading, I have to be honest. I think there's two sides to that. There's one that's trading with English speakers in Israel, which is in of itself a huge market, and then the Israelis themselves. I don't think there's that much difference in terms of like customs or anything like that. Like most people you're trading with, they're not different from anyone else you're trading with, I guess the thing I would say with Israelis is that they never think that they think their English is perfect, and it's very hard for them to hear that their English isn't. So even if I speak pretty good Hebrew these days, but what I found a lot is that even if my Hebrew is much better than the Israelis' English, they'll still speak to me in English because Israelis can't admit they don't speak English. Apart from that, it's not like you're going to like Asia or Abu Dhabi or Dubai. It's very much based on an American culture here. All the high-tech companies either have offices in America or are American umbrellas in Israel. Everything's very much based around America. So they're trying to emulate that in every way they can. They want to be seen as Americanized as possible. So they're really going to, and every company really has an English, an English speaker, native English speaker, associate or salesperson. So if you're dealing with someone, there's a high chance that they are, a native English speaker. So it's not that different, to be honest.
It's brilliant. I loving those answers. So what's the biggest mistake that you find when people who come along to a networking group?
Always the same mistake. They're there to sell, and they're on a sales spiel. They're only telling people about what they do. This networking is about building relationships, about growing, genuine, real relationships. So people want to refer your business. If you come in all guns blazing and are just selling, it's a huge turn off. It's very boring, and it's not going to work. Also, more importantly, it is a slow game. It does take time, and I think that people really don't always understand that. And a big problem is that sometimes someone will come to a networking, the first networking event they come to, they'll get business, which is the biggest problem. Because if they come to one networking event and think they'll get business, they then kind of think that at every meeting they'll get business straight away, and that's how it works. And they just got very lucky, but they don't see it that way. They just see it as, well, that's networking, I should just get business, straight away. It's an educational process, to be honest, which is challenging at times.
Yeah, I like to call them hunters. So basically they whisk up as many business cards as they possibly can, and then swiftly depart again. What sort of top tips would you give people for doing let's face it, all networking is about there might be some form of pitch element into it. So what sort of tips would you give people for doing a really great pitch?
Okay, so the first thing that I would say is it's not even about what you say, it's about your body language and intonation. So you want to stand up straight, even if you're on camera on Zoom, you want to do that. I see so many people who they move their cameras like this, so I'm seeing that forehead, make sure it's centered properly. You want to be smiling whilst you speak. Always, not the whole time, but you want to keep reminding yourself, smile, because people buy from people they like, and if you look miserable, people will not want to buy from you. And I do training to members on 60 seconds, that's part of the deal they get. And I always tell people, make sure you're smiling when you're speaking, and change intonations. So many people, they sit there and they deliver the 60 seconds. Hi, my name's Bob. I'm a plumber. I'm a really good plumber. Just change. Hi, I'm Bob. I'm a plumber. I'm a really good. Believe in yourself and work and invest in 60 seconds. Those are the most important things. Even if you're saying it's utter drivel, that's the most important, essentially. And definitely, I think smiling, and especially smiling for men, to be honest. I think men often think, staff for men, you should be smiling in your 60 seconds, because it's harder to relate. I'm a friendly person, I'm warm anyway. I naturally do smile quite a lot when I speak. Even if I don't, I look animated. I look engaged. It's different. So, definitely those are the main things. And practice, do practice a little bit. Because I would also say online, 60 seconds is much harder because people are looking at their phones and people don't realize that. It's much easier face to face. You've got kind of a captive audience. So online, you do need to practice. In terms of the format of it themselves, I always say kind of the same format. Introduce yourself, say who you are and what you do. Hi, I'm Bob. I'm from Litchester. Give a case study. We used to have a client, they had a block drain. I came, I fixed it in 2 hours. I gave them an affordable price and it lasted for 4 years. A case study that's understandable without jargon, quick, simple, easy, and then a call to action. And be really specific. Please don't say you're looking to speak with everyone. Everyone's your client. That's great. Everyone's your client, but like people need help. You need to make it really easy to refer them. So say I'm looking to refer to marketing man. Sorry, he's a plumber. So he's looking to work with estate agents based in the Litchester area, from whatever it is to whatever it is.
Yeah, I agree.
Make it easy for people. If you make articles for your business, they are not referring you business, and that everyone, which is such lazy 60 seconds. You know what I mean? Like everyone, great. Like what am I doing with that information? Like be really specific.
It's really funny. It's great to hear it from somebody else. I do find that, you'll say to somebody, so who's your target market? They go, well, everybody really. I said, but our brains don't work like that. I always say, like, our brain is like an old-fashioned Rolodex, folks. So if you mention you're looking for a particular industry, for example, or even a particular company, that's how our brains can actually kind of sort through it and sort through the noise to be able to find you some contacts. So it is time, folks, for this month's topic, which something I'm very passionate about. I know you are too, Helena, having face-to-face meetings. It's called, the blog this month is called It's Not All About the Food, folks. So for those that don't know what I'm talking about, is quite often when you go networking, people that think that you're going for a tasty lunch, a 3-course meal, a breakfast meeting, whatever it may be. It's not about the food. It is very much about the networking relationships. The food is just to make sure that you don't go hungry whilst you're networking, realistically. But the number of people that mention about the food. Helena, I want to know, because obviously your networking groups are quite early in the day. What do you guys have for breakfast over there? Strange question.
It's really interesting. So Tel Aviv is like my main. Tel Aviv is the group that's been face to face the longest and the most like serious. Other ones have been off and on, but Tel Aviv, like apart from COVID, has been. So we started Tel Aviv the launch with pastries. Yeah, no one ate them. Not one person ate those pastries. No one. I was fuming. Okay. And then I tried loads of different things. And then I brought crisps and I brought like pretzels I didn't like. And basically, honest to God, it was quite helpful. I had one member specifically who every week would say, didn't like this, did like this. We didn't like this. It was too noisy for us to eat. We did like the fruit. And honest to God, it was a journey. Like it was a real journey for us to evolve, to know what, because the problem, I didn't do it at coffee shops. So in Israel, my spacing was a big problem. Finding a space, I don't know how for you it is in England, but for us, the space is the biggest problem for me, and the costs are astronomical. Like I can't spend a fortune on food because as it is, the profit margins are slim, which people do not necessarily appreciate. So it was a huge problem with food. So I tried this and I tried that, and then eventually we started making sandwiches. And I would make them in the space itself, basically like before the meeting. So I'd arrive much earlier, like 8 a.m., which for me is still very late for networking because I'm used to like BNI 7 a.m. So for me, that was no problem. So I made sandwiches and they would say, no, we didn't like this one, whatever. So now basically we have, my fiance actually makes the sandwiches at our house. The space happens to be very close. And he's like he's like a very serious, methodical person. He makes them and then he wraps them nicely. Like I'm like a bit all over the place. Like it's not really my thing. So he does that, and then I walk them over, and we have smoked salmon and cream cheese sandwich. We have a tuna, and we have a veggie option. But that's taken like 2 years to get right, so that people are happy with it. And because I couldn't also pay for, and even the catered food, the pastries, I get complaints about pastries that they're too fattening. That's a big, I'm telling you, they're not healthy. And when I do pastries, no one eats them. Like I was bringing all these yummy chocolate snacky things and no one touched them.
Yeah.
So
do you have people say that they've got an allergy to gluten and then order
no, I don't. No, it's
or something?
definitely not. Because I don't know why it's interesting. No, and for us, I think I'll tell you what the thing with your challenge, I think, is that you are in a restaurant. So people assume that they're paying for the meal. They're not really paying for the meal. They're paying for your service. They're paying for the space. And the food happens to be there, whereas for me, it's in a workspace, and I'm very clear that they get light refreshments. So the fact, firstly, they get any food, they should be happy. But because it's not in a restaurant, I think the mentality is a little bit different around it. I think, and no one thinks they're paying. They definitely don't think they're paying for the food, because I mean, I pay for it. It's not cheap, but like we make it here.
That's real love there, right there, by the way, Helena, that you've got.
Well, I don't know about you,
the lunch.
With your husband, but my fiance is very much, I joke he's like the CFO of the business, is like the financial officer. Obviously he's Israeli as well, so he deals with the finances, he speaks to Israeli suppliers, because it's not just a language, they're just difficult to deal with anyway. So he deals with everything. He is really a partner in the business, and I've actually just started working with his company on their LinkedIn, so we are, when it comes to business, we are increasingly intertwined.
Oh, bless you. That's great. No, my husband just tells everybody I eat lunch for a living, which probably doesn't help with the food.
I'm sure he's very proud.
He is indeed, yeah. So we're gonna it's on the same topic really, about food and drink in general. Reason why I asked about the breakfast is because in Blighty it's quite common to have a huge sort of big breakfast, which I can't always kind of get my head around that.
It's not a thing at all.
No,
really not a thing here.
So gonna be moving on to networking stories, folks. So I'd like you to share a good networking story with me. One of the things, keeping on the topic of food, I thought I'd share mine first. So people coming to a networking event even in the evening or lunchtime think it could be quite a boozy event, and sure, there are networking events like that out there.
100%.
You know, we've all tried and dabbled.
They're awful.
Yeah. One of my networking story, in fact, I've got two related to alcohol, both at lunchtime, I have to say. So it's 11:30. So this woman must have been having a few beforehand.
God, yeah.
Came along thinking it was a boozy lunch, and managed, for those that know what a tea and coffee station is, it's where you've got two big urns which are 25 litres each, something like that, I think. Yeah, they're huge, and a good 20 to 30 cups on there. She manages to take the whole station down with her by moving the tablecloth. It was like a magic trick, but without the magic. And yeah, I mean, it was lucky that nobody got splashed with the tea and coffee itself. But yeah, that's story number one. Story number two, again, a lady thought it must have been some form of boozy lunch, but disguised boozy lunch. She decided to come with a can of coconut milk, and which I thought was really odd anyway. So we provided refreshments, soft drinks, and as well as hot drinks, and this coconut can remained on the table for quite a while, and it was only like near the end of the meeting and I realized that it just must have been full of alcohol, this can. And how do you deal with that? there's no coming back. Anyway, so Helena, you've probably seen, like me, you've seen quite a lot of stories.
Yeah.
Time for your networking story.
So I have two. I actually thought of one as you were speaking, which I think you'll enjoy as well. Mine aren't drinking ones, I have to say, though. I kind of wish that I'd been there for the coconut can. So my first one was I went to a networking group that obviously was not yours. It was a different one. And there were some interesting characters there, shall we say. And there was a woman there. I don't know how to say this politely, really. Well, she would just kind of tell us very much about her predilections, shall we say, which included a variety of things, some of which were perhaps more appropriate for 50 Shades of Grey, and she was very open about those. And then we later learned that she had an affair with another one of the members who was married. So that was number one, which was honestly crazy. I watched it unravel, I watched it unfold in live, and it was absolutely mental. And the second one, which I just thought about now, actually, I'll tell you which group later, Lizzie, was someone basically had a woman who was a bit older, had been seeing someone, and she told us every month, I'm seeing this person, whatever. And then she stood up to give her 60 seconds, and instead of giving it, she gave us, it's basically explained that the guy that she'd been seeing, he'd lied about everything. Like, he'd said to her that he was like from the army, and he'd lied. I think he was maybe either married and she didn't know about it. Like, he'd lied about everything from the start, and she just found out, and she told us in detail everything, like everything. And it was absolutely amazing. I mean, it was just, I was on the edge of my seat. I can't remember the details now because it was a long time ago, but it was honestly, it was just, I mean, I felt bad for her because she was fuming, understandably, but it was brilliant story, Mike, and she told it well. So yeah, that was another one I just remembered as you spoke. I'm sure there's more like that, but those were the two main ones that came to mind.
Well, look, you've opened it up now for another podcast with more stories there.
Less so it is. Although I would say one more thing about a BNI chapter that I was a member before I left, that two people met there and got married, which was very cute.
Oh, there we go.
That was really nice.
Networking with a happy ending.
That's my dream. Someone meets a man in networking and gets married. That's my dream.
Oh, there we are. So you've been an absolute joy to have on today's Networking Diaries. Do keep on checking out our website or connect with me on LinkedIn. I am just called Lizzie Phillips. Apparently, I am one of just the only Lizzie Phillips on LinkedIn, if you believe it or not. There we are. And of course, do connect with our wonderful speaker today, Helena Baker. Lena, you've been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for coming on to Networking Diaries.
So much. Bye.